uh, sort of talk to these people about or try to get a gauge of?
Yeah. These are people that are very sober-minded. I mean, this individual was early in the morning, going to work, not under the influence of anything. And that person had a similar clearance as mine, TSSCI. So, we've gone through
What's that?
top secret, sensitive Department of Information clearance. And, just like myself, I've been through multiple polygraphs in my career. So did this individual. So
does he have any idea or any theories about why this thing was following him?
No, that's what freaked him out the most, because he didn't have any experience in his life like this. It totally blew his mind when he looked out his moonroof and then looked out the side of his car door and saw this 300-foot triangle. It was like pre-dawn sky, but it was darker than the pre-dawn sky, and it had this plasma edges, it was purplish glowing edges, and these three lights that had these omnidirectional, almost like pool lights. How you can't really tell where the light source is. And it was totally trippy. And that's just one example of many anecdotal, with some evidence, pilot stories. And that's what made me dig deeper. And I started, cultivating my network. Has the government studied this before? This wasn't just OSAP and ATIP and Blue Book and all this shit in the past, right? This seems serious. So certainly the government has looked at this. And, I went to search for that program, and that's what I ended up whistleblowing on, right?
So how did you initially discover this program, and what was your first encounter with the information?
A very senior individual in the intel community came to me when I guess I was asking a lot of questions because I'm a very inquisitive guy, and it was hey, I need to introduce you to somebody. He listed that certain person's academic credentials, which were beyond reproach, PhD level education, clearance, resume was insane. I'm well, okay, sure. I'll talk to this person. And I ended up meeting that person in a, top secret facility. And, he started to discussing hey, there's a program. I was on it. And, we were reverse engineering crash material that we've recovered over the decades, and he's I'm not joking, we're telling you because you guys have to report to the Deputy Secretary of Defense and Congress on this matter, right? And we were actively briefing Secretary Esper, Deputy Secretary Norquist, other cabinet level folks, right? And it's there's an oversight issue because you're the UAP task force. You should be read into this stuff because why spend the taxpayers, dollars looking at stuff that we already have data on?
Right.
So that spooked me. And that was fall of 2019. And, I don't take a guy's word for it. I'm you know what? Myself and my trusted colleagues that had a lot of special accesses like me, we cultivated our network, and we ultimately interviewed about 40 people or so, all the way up to multi-star generals, directors of agencies, mid-level guys that literally touched it, worked inside of it, all the stuff. They brought intel reports for me to look at, documents, and a lot of that I could cross-verify with other oral sources that my high-level colleagues or I talked to, and it checked out. Especially when I had enough information on, and I know who specifically to ask. Hey, well, I want read into this. I'm on the UAP task force, and we went to those. I'll call them gatekeepers for the lack of a better term, and they basically said, "Fuck you" to me and my colleagues.
So why were these other people willing to discuss this with you?
Well, they determined I didn't need to know. I was already cleared at such a high level, handling presidential material and everything. It's Dave needs to know. And they felt that coming to us, it was a form of a protected disclosure. They felt that they weren't really violating anything because, we were I'll call it the investigatory body for the Department of Defense and the intelligence community and Congress at the time. And they, you are allowed to, disclose to a government official in an official capacity. And I, did that. And, of course, I protected those people. And do know I took those people, a lot of them, and I brought them to the Intelligence Community Inspector General when I filed my complaint. Because I don't want people to, hear it from a secondhand source. People call it hearsay, whatever. Though I have some firsthand knowledge, I eventually talk about someday. I'm trying to get it cleared, but through security processes. So they could hear it and hear the details, like, who, what, when, where, why, where the shit is, who's in control of it, what are the cover programs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and that's what deemed my complaint credible and urgent in July 2022, which is my complaint, yes, was about reprisal too. I filed that separately eventually to the Department of Defense Inspector General. And that's an ongoing investigation, but it was my congressional oversight UAP crash retrieval allegations that was deemed credible and urgent. It was sent to the Director of National Intelligence, and then it was sent to the Congressional Intelligence Committees around that time, July of 2022. And I eventually went to Congress in December of 2022, and it's a crazy story why it took so long. It's fucking nuts. But I provided total about 11 and a half to 12 hours of classified testimony to the congressional staffers and their lawyers for both the House and the Senate. And I went, full open kimono. I mean, I told them as much as I could within my time slot, if you will.
So this is obviously very compartmentalized,
Yes.
where there's only a few people that know about this information, and they're not allowed to discuss it with other people. Mm-hmm. When did this all start? I mean, is this out of Roswell? Is it predate that? Like, when did they first realize that there are things that cannot be explained or can't be explained through conventional means?
Yeah, I mean, the program goes back a ways. The precise beginning of it, I can't talk about, but I did, because of security stuff, but I did talk about publicly the 1933 retrieval, and I did that tactically, and I ran that through the Security Approval Office because I wanted to show that this is much older and it's international. It's not like a U.S. thing. I mean, this stuff is landing or crashing around the world, and unexpected countries have had this happen, and that's why I picked that, because I thought that was a interesting case. And then, of course, Pope Pius XII and the Vatican were involved, back-channeling it through the OSS, which became the CIA later, to FDR, and that's how the U.S. knew something weird happened in Italy right before World War II. But
so this is